Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing? Everyone can hear me? You can write in the chat. All right, we're just going to wait for a couple of more minutes and then we'll get started. Meanwhile, all of you can introduce where you are, where you are logging in from. From Brazil, that's great. Uh, Colin Green, Colin Grenfell. So where is everybody logging in from? All right, Brazil, nice. Scotland, okay, very nice, Scotland. Never been to Scotland, maybe one day, hopefully. All right. All right, so let's from Mexico. Yeah, I've been to Mexico City. It's amazing. I've been actually to Mexico City two times. Both time really enjoyed it. The food over there is just insane, really good. Nepal, Edith from Grapevine, Texas. So you're a Texan just like me. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm in Houston. And the weather over here is, Texas, pretty good right now. Close, what is it, like 50, 60? Nice. All right, so looks like 11 o'clock. We should probably get started. If you're just joining in, um, you know, make sure to introduce yourself in the chat. And now this is a very basic introduction to Vapor. All right. Very basic means like a teaser. You can think of it like, like a 30-minute introduction. Okay. So let me go through this. So we're just gonna see some really basic things in Vapor. We're not gonna go to migrations and MVC and database, and we're not gonna go all of that. That's like a 3-hour lecture. All right. And I'm gonna get to that. So here is a little bit my introduction. So hopefully everyone can see my screen correctly. Should be able to see it. Let me see actually over here, double check everything. Not sure where the OBS is. Okay, yeah, so you should be able to see everything. All right, so here's a little bit about myself. My name is Mohammad Azam, and I'm in Houston, Texas, iOS developer. I work as a coding bootcamp instructor. So for my day job, I teach, depending on what I'm enrolled to teach. I think sometimes I'm teaching like web development. These days I'm teaching machine learning in Python. So it's completely different from iOS, but it's fun. Machine learning in Python, all of the scikit-learn pandas. So it's fun to teach that. I'm also the founder of my own website, which is Azam Sharp School, and I'll show you a couple of screenshots of that. But you can always visit Azam Sharp School at azamsharp.school. I'm a speaker, author. Actually, next month I'm going to not to Scotland, but I'm going to Finland to do a workshop on unit testing. All right, so that's going to be fun. Fun. First time it will be for in Finland. So here is the my website. Oops. This is the azamsharp.school. You can. It has. I think it's one of the largest. It has one of the largest catalogs for iOS development videos. It's like close to 180, 160, 180 hours and 30 plus courses. All right. Now, all of you are over here to attend the Vapor mini workshop or mini introduction. Uh-oh, what just happened over here? Okay, there we go. For some reason, my screen died. Okay. All right. So the vapor introduction, the vapor, what you're going to learn today, is really like 10% of what I'm going to cover in my actual workshop, which is next week. All right, so the link you can see over here, if you go to adamsharp.school/workshops, you will be able to look at that workshop and you can look at all the content that we're going to be covering in the actual workshop. So this is just a teaser, just a preview of the workshop. That workshop will include routing, MVC pattern, database integration, and also how to consume your own API, uh, you know, using SwiftUI. So we'll build an API, we'll connect to the database, we'll do the migrations, we'll do the MVC pattern, routing, everything, and then you will connect to your own API and consume it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. This is next week, by the way. It's a 3-hour workshop, so it's going to take at least 3 hours, and it's on February 7th. So it's going to be on Friday from 11 a.m. Central to 2. All right, and it costs only $50. Usually these workshops can go as high as like $600-800, but I'm just opening it to everyone so everyone can enroll, enjoy it, and you can go to Adam Sharp, this particular link that you have, and you can check out some other workshops also. It's going to be coming in the future. There we go. All right. So today you are here to learn really the basics of Vapor. So who over here has worked with any kind of custom backend development framework? So go ahead and write in the chat and tell me which framework you have used. That can be Ruby on Rails, that can be Django, ASP.NET MVC, Express, Node. I mean, all of these are really good frameworks. I think Kotlin maybe provides something also. So Vapor is for Swift language. So if you are working in Swift language, and probably you are because you're an iOS developer, then Vapor is a really good choice because you're not really leaving the whole iOS Swift ecosystem. You're still, using the Swift language, and you're doing that. Now, some of you are writing Node PHP, very good. Node Express, I actually really like Node Express also. So since I'm teaching, full stack web development, that's what we use. Okay. And one person is saying this, the Vapor basics. Okay. All right. So that's good. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't really have that many slides. And once again, keep in mind, this is going to be a very basic session. We're not going to even touch the database. All right. It's just going to be very basic stuff. Okay, I use Vapor, took your Udemy course and bootcamp on Udemy. Okay, that's excellent. All right. So let me pull up over here the Vapor website. This is the official Vapor website. Let's see over here. I need to see chat window. Okay. All right. So Vapor website, couple of things you will need to get started. All right. So once you go to the Vapor website, let's go to Getting Started and install for Mac OS. So obviously you will need Xcode. I mean, without that, you are not really going to do any iOS development probably. So make sure that you have Xcode. You should also double check your Swift version, and it should tell you something, along the lines of 5.8 or 6, all of that stuff. Now, this is the important part. This is where the Vapor installation kind of begins. So you need to install Vapor using Brew. So what is Brew? What if you don't have Brew? If you go to brew.sh, and let me share this link actually so that you can look at it. But this is all on the documentation. Now, if you run this command brew install Vapor and you don't have homebrew installed, then it's not really going to work. It's going to be like, hey, what is brew? So if you go to brew.sh, Brew is just a package manager. So you can go over there and install Homebrew on your machine. And the way that you install it, it's pretty simple. You just click over here or copy this line and run it from anywhere on your terminal. Uh, Most of you, if you're doing any kind of iOS development and you have used other packages, they may have a dependency on Brew. So maybe you already have Brew installed. But if you don't have Brew installed, it's not a big deal. Just go to brew.sh and you can download Brew. All right. So copy this line. I already have Brew installed, so I'm not going to run this line again. But simply copy this line, go to your terminal, open the terminal, anywhere. It doesn't really matter where you are. Just paste this line and you're done. All right. So once you have Brew installed, then and only then you can run this command, which is brew install Vapor. And this is going to install Vapor for you. And all of this is in the documentation, in the vapor.code's website, official documentation. Once you, and by the way, if anybody has any questions, they can just type in the chat. All right. Now what we're doing right now, it's not really a workshop, so I am not expecting anyone to follow along these things. Workshop will be on the February 7th, and I'll mention it at the end also. Once you install Vapor, then you can run Vapor help. This is always a good idea to run Vapor help so that it will tell you, or you will have some sort of indication that you have installed Vapor or not. See that? Once I run Vapor help, it actually shows me all of this stuff. So this means, okay, Vapor is installed on my machine. So I'm good to go now. Next, go to getting started. Okay. Getting started means that you're going to be creating the Vapor project. And the way that you create a Vapor project, once you install Vapor using Brew, is to run Vapor new, the name of the project, and -n. The -n over here, the -n flag, gives you the bare bones template. All right, so it's going to be like nothing there, or it's basically pretty much bare bones. I mean, it's not like nothing there, there's something there, but it will be bare bones. So, and I always use -n to create my project because I always like to start from the very beginning and I want to add things as I see it or as I need them. So let me just copy this command and let's open up the terminal. I'm going to go and jump on my desktop. All right, and just run this command. Now this command, it means that it's going to run Vapor new hello, that's the name of the project, and -n means that it's going to be really the bare bones project. And it's actually pretty quick. See that? It's already done. It's already created the project for me. So that's actually pretty nice. It's super fast. Now I can go ahead and jump into that particular project that I created. It's called hello, right? That's what we call the project. So I can just go in that directory. It's on the desktop. I can go there. And here's the thing. Once you create the project, you go in that directory, this is from official documentation. You can see that. And then you simply open package.swift. Once you open package.swift, it's going to open your file in Xcode. So let me actually show you how we can do that. I'm already inside my hello folder. I can say open package.swift. And here we go. It's opening. Now we are in Xcode. All right. So it's opening Xcode. You can see. Now, the first time you open Xcode, it might take a little bit of time, and you can actually see on the left-hand side, it's trying to download all of those package dependencies, right? But this is your actual Vapor project. One thing that you should change immediately is, look at that. It's actually, the target is set to my actual iPhone, but we're not going to run Vapor server on our iPhone. So let's go ahead and change it to the Mac. So make sure this is set to your computer, Mac, MacBook Pro, whatever you want, whatever is set up. you're running the server on your Mac machine, not on your phone. So that's one of the important things. All right. Any questions at this point? I know this is going to be like really basic stuff, so it's not going to be like advanced stuff. But if you are, first time you're getting started, I think you will probably like this like this session because it will introduce you to the Vapor framework, and hopefully you will enjoy working with Vapor. Yeah, if you do have any question, you can just use the chat and ask questions over there. All right. Next thing, let's go ahead and take a look at these files. If you open up the app folder, you can see we have controllers, which is nothing there, configure. Let me actually make sure that I can increase the font size. Hopefully now you can see everything. And I have entry point. Okay, that's too big for me. All right, hopefully this is good enough for you. Okay, that was too big. And we have routes. Now, in this session, we'll only be talking about routes. Routes is the place which will be called, if you go to the entry point, you can see that it is configuring the app and all that stuff. And over here, we're configuring the routes inside the configure file. So routes is basically where you will define all of your actions or endpoints. So these are all the endpoints you have right now. Vapor already added these for you. This is kind of like the root endpoint. It means that if you go to mywebsite.com, this is what gets executed. If you go to mywebsite.com/hello, then this gets executed. Now, obviously, mywebsite.com, I'm just giving an example. When you're running Vapor, then it will be different. All right. So the question is, any plans to bring Vapor content plus leave something more focused on web? Currently, I don't have any plans for that, but yes, you can use Vapor to create server side or server driven application, not driven, server side pages. All right. So the Vapor can be used not only to create the API endpoints, which returns you JSON or whatever you want, but Vapor can also be used to create websites. All right. And that is done by Leaf templates. But again, Leaf templates, completely different topic. Probably we'll cover it maybe later. But yeah, you can build your own server side pages, kind of like classic old ASP, ASP.NET, or even classic active server pages long time ago from the 90s. So you can do all of those things. All right, so I haven't really written any code, so let's go ahead and run this. I'm just going to press the play button. This is going to run the server. And if you look at your output window, you should have some sort of a URL. So it's still building. You can see my machine is a little bit slow, but it's still building. And once it is built, we will get some sort of a URL, like a local host. And then we can go to that URL to see what it returns. So let me go ahead and, I don't know why it's taking too long, but yeah, usually for the first time it does take a while, and also my computer is not Silicon Mac. I am using iMac, so that also makes it slower. But if you have a Silicon, Apple Silicon, I think it's going to be like really fast on that. All right, so still running, trying to run. There we go. Okay. It shows you some message that, okay, no working directory, blah, 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 whatever. We're going to fix that. But this is the thing that we were after. What is the URL? And here it is. It gives you this URL. So let me actually just copy this URL, this one. And I'm going to go and just open a new window and just put the URL in there. And look at what it prints. it says it works. I think that's pretty cool that it's able to go to this action, this one, and return it works. Yes, so this is on YouTube, so the recording will be available automatically. All right. And what about how can we use this URL? I mean, this endpoint, route, so many different names, right? I mean, URL, endpoint, route, action. Well, this one is saying that get request, app.get, and if we go to hello, then this will get executed. So if I go back and it's in my URL, if I simply say hello, oh, now we can go to a different route or invoke a different action. And it says hello world. So I think this is really good. We have two actions and we can invoke both of these actions going to the root and going to hello. So that's how Vapor works. All right. Well, let's create some actions of our own. So inside the routes, you can create your own actions. And the way that you create actions or way that you create routes is using app dot and get. Now, if you're creating a get route, you will use get. If you're creating a post route, you will use post. If you're creating a delete route, you'll get the idea, right? You're going to use delete. Oops, not like that, but like this. Delete. And I think they have also put and patch probably also. There we go, right? So we're just going to use get. Now, I want to create a route when people go to movies, I want to return something. Well, what should I return? Well, I should just return movies for now. So this is a closure and async closure. And when you use app.get or app.post, inside the closure, you access the request. So this is the request object, request dot, headers, URL, body, all of those things you can access. But right now what we're saying is when you go to movies, just return a string called movies. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this. Okay. Once I run this and I go back over here, and instead of hello, I call movies. Now I'm going to movies, right? It's pretty cool that we can actually go to movies now. Okay, well, that's interesting. But let's make it a little bit more real world like, meaning if you're watching movies, movies can have genres, right? I mean, there can be horror movies, there can be kids movies, there can be documentaries, drama, fiction. So how can I do that? Well, how about if I add another one over here and I say drama. So this means that the URL will become movies/drama. All right. And I can say over here, drama movies. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. So this is basically you are creating your route and you're saying that, oh, I'm going to go to movies/drama. Then I will get all the drama movies. I mean, obviously right now it simply returns you a string, but what we're saying is when we go to movies/drama, it will return me all the drama movies. But movies are not only drama, right? I mean, movies can be different. Movies can be a lot of different things. Like movies can be for kids. Okay, so we'll go to kids, and then we can say kids movies. Movies can be horror. I can go ahead and create horror, and it will be horror movies. Although this technique will work, because if I run this application, you will see that it will work. Let's go back. Drama movies, well, it's already working, so that's fine. What about kids? Okay, yeah, it goes and returns something. What about horror? All of them are working, but the problem that you see over here is what about if we had 10 different genres or 20 different genres, like categories, these things. Okay, so the question is, do I have to compile the app all the time to see the changes? Is there any way to see the changes? Um, See the changes that you're doing over here, you do have to stop the server and you have to run the server again for these changes to take effect. I know that when you're using Node or Express, you can use something called Node Monitor or NodeMon. Um, I don't know if this is available in Swift or Vapor, but yeah, whenever I had to change something in the routes, I have to stop the server and start the server again just by using the play button. All right. Okay, so this technique that we are using, although it works, but it's a lot of work. I mean, I have three genres right now. What about if I had like 10? I don't want to do that. So in order for this to minimize or to simplify, what we can do is we can say app.get movies, and then over here we can say, the genre that you're passing. Now, this is a little bit different from our previous route because if you see carefully, I have added a colon over here. And colon over here is basically saying this is a route parameter. Route parameter means that now you can make a request movie slash whatever, right? So movie slash horror. This can also capture movie slash kids. This can also capture movie slash, you get the idea. So it can capture everything. So whatever these things that I'm passing, it will be accessible using this variable that I created called genre. All right, so that's the important part over here to understand. Now, it doesn't have to be genre. You can call it name if you want. You can call it genre, you can call it X, you can call it anything you want, but we know it's kind of like a category or a genre. So that's why we're going to call it genre. Now, the question over here becomes like, well, if I'm doing that, how will I get the value? I mean, people can be passing anything over here. I mean, they can pass in horror or kids or drama. Well, this is where the request comes into play. Request.params, parameters dot get, and this is where we are going to grab the value of the genre and put it into a different variable. If that value is not present, then we can throw a bad request exception with the reason saying, genre is missing or something like that. All right. So this means that instead of creating these routes, all of these ones, we don't really need all of this because all of these can be handled by this route. And these are known, and this technique or this particular thing is known as route parameters. And that's what we did. We created a route parameter called genre so that people can just pass in movie slash whatever, and now we can access that. And now if I return something over here, genre, I mean, it's just a string that we're passing, so it's just going to return us the same exact string. Let me go ahead and run this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these things because we don't need them anymore. And that kind of simplifies our life because now one route can handle all of these things. So let me go ahead and run this. And if I go over here and refresh it, you can see it still works. So whatever I'm passing in the URL, that is the same stuff that is being returned to me. So instead of creating like 10 or 20 different routes, we were able to handle all of that stuff just from one route, which is pretty cool. And you may have already seen these things. Like if you go to like Amazon or any other website, you will see these things. Like if you go to, I don't know, Netflix, they have all of these things also built in. They don't have like 30 different routes to handle genre. And even over here, you can make it much longer. You can say You can pass in other stuff also. So this route can become movie slash drama slash 1992 or things like that. You can do all of those things. So you can have multiple route parameters in your URL if that is what is required, all right, if that is what you needed, all right. Now currently, if you see over here, our route is returning string. But when you're creating iPhone applications, when you're creating Android or even web application, um, most of the time you're returning JSON, right? So it would be a good idea to somehow return JSON. So how do we return JSON? Well, I'm just going to code it over here. First, I will represent what I want to return. So this will be movie. Now, one thing you will notice is that I am conforming to this content. All right, so if I check out this content, content is a protocol that is provided by Vapor, and it is codable, request decodable, response decodable, and so on. So if when you're using Vapor, you should be using content if you want to decode, encode that stuff. And that's the reason we're conforming or we are using the content protocol for movie. What things we will need for movie? Well, we need ID, so integer. We need the name of the movie, that can be like this. We need the genre of the movie. Now, just to simplify, I'm using genre as a string, but I think in your case it can be an enum also. All right, so that is perfectly fine if you want to do that. Now, what I want to do is I want to use this movie struct and return movies, all of the movies. Well, for all of the movies, I should probably have another route. All movies. App.get movies request, and then we will simply say over here all movies. Because these movies are based on the genre, remember? So this will return just all the movies. Okay, but how do we return all the movies? Well, in those cases, well, we don't really even have the movies. I mean, we only have the struct, but we don't have the movies. Now, what I usually do in this scenario is I go to ChatGPT, create movies, and I just say create movies, and it will create kind of like an array of movies. I'm not really sure how. Oh boy, I think it's going completely. Okay, so maybe it didn't understand the question that I'm saying. So let's say create an array of movies. All right, so maybe it didn't understand what I was trying to ask, but now you can see, there we go. It's creating that. All right. Let me stop it right there, and I tell it for genre, use a single word. I'm just telling it that, hey, just don't use science fiction, just use like sci-fi or things like that. So we can, it will be a little bit easier for us. All right. So this is how I use ChatGPT to do kind of like the grunt work. And now I can copy this stuff and just paste it somewhere. Obviously, this is not our database or anything. This is just to show you that we have an array of movies. And if we want to return this array of movies, well, I can just return all of these movies. There we go. All right. Pretty simple, right? To return an array of movies. Okay, let's run this. So this means that if I go to /movies, then it will return me an array of movies. And since the movie is using content, or it is conforming to content, it should automatically just convert it to JSON. Look at that. Isn't that great? We got a list of all the movies as JSON. Now, if you have an iPhone application or Android application or even a web application, you can consume this. I mean, if you have been writing iPhone code or iPhone development using SwiftUI or UIKit, you know how to consume this into your application. So you can display all of these movies. So I think that's pretty cool that you can do that. All right. Any questions at this point? And if you have any question, you can just write it on the chat. All right. Now the if I think one of you asked questions some time back is how are you formatting this JSON so nicely, right? So I'm using Chrome browser, and I think in Chrome browser you have JSON view that you can download, and the link will be right there in your chat, and that will make your JSON response look nicer. You can see it looks really nice over here. All right. Okay, so that's pretty good. What about movies based on genre? I mean, over here we can also maybe edit this part and return the movies based on the genre. All right, so we can say movies.filter where the genre of the movie, lowercase, is equals to the genre that the person is actually passed, lowercase. So we can just use a filter, a normal filter, easy filter, to filter the movies based on the genre. All right, so now let's go ahead and see. So the question is, are there any downsides or limitations to using Vapor versus like a Node Express other API technology? That's a good question. Um, Downsides, I mean, Vapor can do pretty much whatever Express or Node can do. Now, one of the things that I personally, and that's my personal opinion, I personally like about uh, Vapor can be that since it's a strongly typed language, Swift, this means that whatever DTO objects, the response object, request object that you're going to create, they are strongly typed. Now, you can look at it both ways, right? I mean, sometimes people like that, sometimes they don't like that. So it gives you that security that those things, whatever you're creating, like the response and request objects that you create, custom response and request objects, those are strongly typed. Um, but at the same time, maybe you do or do not need that. Maybe you're like, well, it would be just nice if I just return an object and it automatically converts to JSON. So in those cases, Node and Express is much better option. But it really depends. I think all of these things you can do with Vapor, you can do with Express and Node, and other way around. From a community perspective, Vapor community is pretty active on Discord. The Slack, I mean, not the Slack, but the Discord channel, the chatting channel that they have. So they will be able to help you out with that. So it's definitely, it's a great platform. It's different from Node Express because Node Express has been around for a long time. So it does have a much larger community. And I think if you get stuck in Node Express, then you will you will get help much faster, you know. Um, but it's definitely getting better. I mean, Vapor, when they first announced back in the day, Vapor 1, it was using callbacks. Then they, updated that to event loops or futures. And now they're actually using async and await. So that's actually pretty cool that they were able to do that. All right. All right. Let's test out our movie/genre. So this means if I go over here and I say over here action, see that? I only get action movies. And what other movies do we have? Sci-fi. Okay, sci-fi. Let's check out sci-fi. There we go. So we only get sci-fi movies. So we are able to filter the movies based on, based on what we're passing in the URL. So that is actually pretty cool that you can do that. All right. Okay, so the next thing, and probably the final thing that I would like to cover over here, is how can we uh, how can we perform a post request. All right, and we're just going to look at how you will be able to get the or decode the items, because I don't think I'll be able to edit the movies because it's a constant, and the way that you will edit the movies is a little bit different anyways. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create app.post. The route will be movies, and the signature is pretty much the same thing apart from the post part. So this will be movies, I mean slash movies. The only difference between this and the get post get is that this is method is post. Okay, now over here we do need to return something, or else it's not really going to work. All right, so we will return something eventually. But I think the first question comes that, okay, well, what exactly are we trying to post? Like, how can we post these things? Meaning, what are we, sending? What is coming from the client side? Usually, people end up creating a separate model for that. So I'll go ahead and create struct create movie. And when we're creating the movie from the client side, we're only passing the name and the genre. We're not really passing the ID, because ID will eventually be generated from the database. So we're only passing the name and the genre. So maybe there's a text box or something on the UI where people can add these things. Now, one of the great things about when you're using Vapor is how it can decode things. So content or request.content.decode, and we can decode create movie, and it can give you, well, the movie itself. I mean, you can say, I guess, create movie or whatever you want to say, create movie. So we will get that. All right. And this can blow up, so make sure that you use try. Now, once we get that movie, once it's decoded to the create movie, now we can go ahead and kind of like save the movie and return something. Now, in this case, you can return whatever you want. Let's say movie created or whatever. Now, I'm not going to go and save the movie because, it's not going to work, right? I mean, if I say movies.append, we can't really append this movie. We need to convert it to the movie and then we can append, but it's not going to work. So that's a little bit of a different technique that we'll have to use with all the async and await, all the concurrency in Swift 6. So I have to create something for that. But let's see that if we are able to create movie, just print out these things. That's always a good idea to see that is the data being passed to the server or not. All right. And how do we even see this? We can use our browser to do these things, because browser, if I type in the URL, that's always a GET request. So how can I invoke the post route? Well, let's first run the server. Okay, server is running. Now, the way that you invoke the post route is by using some sort of a networking tool. And in our case, the networking tool we can use to perform GET requests and POST requests and so on, it can be Postman. So Postman is a free tool you can download from the web, from online. I've downloaded the Postman app. There are a lot of other tools that are available, but I use Postman. It's nice and simple. Look at the route that I'm using. That looks like correct route is going to movies, but the most important part is post. If I don't do post and if I simply do get, then look at the result that it's telling me right there. It's executing the get request, like get all of them. But we're trying to test out the post. So I'm going to change this to post. In the headers, make sure to add application JSON, because we want to tell our server that the request content that we are sending is JSON content. So that's why we're setting it up to application JSON. In the body, look at that. In the body, we're sending movie one and action. This is a little bit small, I know. I wonder if I can make it. Yeah, if I make it bigger, it's going to be a little weird. Okay, so this is in JSON, and I usually select raw. Oh boy, it's not. Okay, I would select raw, JSON, and then this is the actual JSON that we are sending. All right. So once we send this JSON, it just says movie created. And right over here, do you see that? When we printed out the movie name, it's movie one, and the genre is action. So it kind of proves that the data that we are sending from Postman or from a client, it can be any client, it can be Swift UI, it can be Android, web, whatever, it is getting through, it is getting to our side on the server, and we are able to extract the name and the genre, and we're able to get that information. Once we got that information, the next step would be to save it to an actual database. All right. So hopefully now you have learned kind of like the very basics of Vapor framework, but you learned some important things. You learned about the GET request, which is obviously one of the most important ones. You learn about the routing over here, or the route parameters, and you learn about a post request. Without the post request, it will be very hard to create new content, add new movies. But there is so much more to learn in Vapor. This is kind of like just the 10% or less. All right. So we're gonna, oops, why am I opening this? Let's see here. So I'll end this session by saying that I am hosting a much detailed, a 3-hour workshop on February 7th. This will be at 11 a.m. Central. February 7th, I believe, is Friday. And this workshop, we are going to cover a lot more, 3 hours. So we're going to cover the routing, which you have already seen a little bit of it, but we will see grouping. We will learn about the MVC pattern. Like right now, I'm just writing all the code in routes, but in your actual application, if you're working on a large project, that routes file can become very large. So how can we make sure that this is structured and organized correctly? So we're going to learn about MVC pattern. You're going to learn about Postgres integration. I'm going to show you some tools like Beekeeper, Postgres app, which is the fastest and the easiest way to install Postgres on your machine. We're going to learn about how to invoke those things using Postman. And then eventually I'll show you a very simple Swift UI application which will allow you to integrate with the server that you just wrote. The link for the workshops is right there in the chat window. So hopefully you'll be able to join this workshop. I am doing some other workshops in the future also. And you'll see that these workshops are very detailed. They are 3 hours long, maybe sometime more, and they are extremely detailed workshops. And usually these workshops, I mean, if you go to a conference, right, these workshops are like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Overall, you might end up spending thousands of dollars if you want to buy a ticket to the conference and airfare and the hotel and all traveling. These workshops, I'm making it accessible to everyone so everyone can enjoy these things. All right. That is pretty much it. Here is my contact information. If you want to share, if you want to talk about this, like if you want to, share references or whatever on social media, that's perfectly fine. And you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is, or X is Azam Sharp. You can check out my Azam Sharp school. I do have apart from the workshop, I do also have courses on full stack web development using Vapor. You should probably check out azamsharp.school for those cases. All right. Okay. Any other questions before we wrap up? All right. Any other questions I can answer? So hopefully you have enjoyed it, because it's a good tool to have. It's a good framework to learn, and I think the one of the things that people don't realize is that once you learn one backend development framework like Vapor, Node, Express, it becomes pretty simple. So Brad is asking about deployment. Okay, so deployment that's a good question. I have only deployed to Heroku, and I found the deployment to be okay. I mean, it was not that difficult to deploy on Heroku. I have not deployed on AWS or any other cloud. I think there are some people who have deployed to fly.io, but let me actually see if I can find that over here in deployment. Deploy. See that fly.io? This is fly.io. I have not used fly.io for deployment, so I can't really talk about that. But Heroku deployment was actually pretty nice and simple. It was not that complicated, and the steps that they have, shown over here, that worked out. I mean, it worked out pretty good. All right. And if you go to azamsharp.school, uh, what sort of server? I don't know what sort of server, but it was on Heroku. It was just on Heroku that I deployed. I think if you're deploying on AWS, it may be EC2 server or something. I think in one of my courses, I talk about this deployment. This one, full stack development course. Uh, yeah, but I think I used, let's see over here. Yeah, it's a pretty big course. Yeah, here we go. So that part kind of talks about the deployment. And let me actually change the color. For some reason, it's different color. Okay. Yeah, so this is the part where I was talking about the deployment. All right. And I'll just add this course also. I mean, if you want, you can definitely check it out and so. Uh, but yeah, so this is a pretty big course, by the way. All right. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have enjoyed this small session, and hopefully you'll be interested. And if you are, uh, join the workshop next week. It's going to be fun. And if you join the workshop, make sure you join the Slack channel, because then I will be able to share you some, when the workshop gets closer, uh, when we are like on February 5th or 6th, I'll share some resources that you can download, Beekeeper, Postman, these kind of tools, so that you're ready for the workshop. But it's going to be fun. You're going to learn something new, and hopefully you'll be able to use it in your side projects, on your main projects at your work. And once you learn one server-side framework, all of the things becomes easier. You will see that. If you already know Node and Express, then you'll be like, oh yeah, it sounds pretty similar. We do the same thing in Express. So that's always good, to transfer knowledge from one framework or one platform to the other platform. All right. But apart from that, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And hopefully, we'll be able to do these in the future also. And yeah, stay tuned for more. Thank you for joining.